Last sort of category of questions before we move on to the questions that we received from the audience here tonight. And this has to do with just overall city government culture, transparency. If you look at the city website, there's an org chart there that has the residents on the top, the council below, and then the city manager at the base. Do you feel that this is how the city is currently managed? And are there any changes that you would advocate? So Victoria, we'll start with you.
No, I don't. Again, as observer of city council meetings for the last couple of years, it seems a little flopped. It seems that I think that the city council needs to set policy, set direction to the city manager and tell him what he's supposed to go do and hold him accountable for the results. And that doesn't seem to happen all the time or most of the time. I think it's the other way around. It seems to me the city manager is running the city council, and I think that's part of our issues currently. I think we need to flip that around. I think, again, that's a leadership issue on the city council, and I think, I think the city council has to be much stronger at giving direction to the city manager and holding him or her accountable and insisting on results. And if that's not happening, then managing through, what that means.
Great, thank you. Jennifer?
I think the org chart is appropriate. We do have the city council, city manager form of government, whereby the city council acts essentially like a board of directors. We're in charge of setting policy. We are actually sort of all three branches of government, a little bit executive, a little bit judicial, and a little bit legislative. We enact ordinances, we hear the planning commission appeals. So we do that. The city manager is more like the CEO, in charge of the operational aspects of the city. I do think it's working in terms of giving direction. Certainly there are times when we need to give direction a couple of times. That all happens in public. There is also a performance evaluation every year that does happen in private, and that's where the city council does give very, very specific direction. Again, it's a personnel matter. There are very limited circumstances under which the city council is allowed to meet in closed session, and personnel matters, for obvious reasons, are one of those. So I do feel that the system is working and that we are managing the city manager appropriately.
All right, thank you. Michael?
Jennifer, I like your analogy of the board of directors and the CEO. And I think the reality in this case, and it's very easy for someone from the outside to walk in and throw the city manager under the bus. So I'm not going to do that. I think the reality, though, is that a lot of the residents are telling me, and what I'm hearing and evaluating and seeing at city council meetings that are held in public, is that they see that agendas are created and that the city council doesn't push back and doesn't question anything and frequently votes 5-0 on things. And so I think the reality is, in looking at the board of directors and the CEO example, the board of directors must hold that CEO accountable and make hire, fire, review decisions, et cetera. And we as residents, regardless of whether I'm running for a council seat or not, allow me to share this feedback because I think many people have it. We don't feel that you are holding Tony accountable. And I also, to defend Tony, think that he is crying out and desperate for strong leadership.
Okay, great. Thank you. Betty Lynn?
So our residents are absolutely the city council's bosses. And the 3 out of 5 of us is Tony's boss, because he only does what the majority of the council actually will approve for him to do. And yes, we usually agree on things 5-0, but there are definitely times where it takes a little bit for us to actually get there. And there are certain things that Tony really pushes back on, but once the decision is made, whether he likes it or not, he will carry it through. We do the city manager's evaluation. This last year we did a 360 because I want to hear from everybody, not just from the council members, but I want to hear from his subordinates to see how he's performing as a leader. And remember, he has brought us through some pretty tumultuous times. He didn't want to have to cut as much as we told him, but he had to. So I know he's not the most charming person and definitely needs to go to charm school a little bit because that's part of our discussion. But as far as the manager's concerned, he's methodical and he's ethical. And thank you.
Thank you very much. David?
Well, again, I agree with the org chart, the way it's drawn. I have to say that I do have a little bit of a concern about whether Tony is, or the city manager is receptive to the residents of the community as he is to the council. My personal experience with it has been on the Financial Advisory Committee. And we've volunteered, we are all volunteers, we were brought in to try to help, and yet we've volunteered to help the city manager and the financial group to do some specific kinds of analysis, and we've not been received well on that. We've had pushback, in other words. And I think that with the issues that are facing our community today and the intellectual talent that we have in this community, we need to find better ways of taking advantage of that intellectual talent to help us think through and openly discuss not only financial issues, but any other issues of concern to the residents.
All right, thank you. Kevin?
So my police relief board is set up similar to the city. There are 11 of us. We're elected by the membership. We have an executive director, and she has a staff of about 18 people. Obviously, if she waited to hear from 3 of us or a quorum, we wouldn't get anything done. I talk with our executive director 2 or 3 times a week. All decisions are run by me. She understands I speak for the board. The whole premise of, I don't know if it's a legal thing where he has to have 3 people give him direction. I'm not familiar with that, but the bottom line is I think there needs to be more accountability on the city manager spot, and I would like to see it run more like we run police relief.
Great, thank you very much. Last question, and then we'll take sort of a quick breather while we collect the questions that you guys have been collating over there, and then we'll start again. So this question, during the past year, PVE has seen a breakdown of courtesy, decorum, and respect during some council meetings. There are some officials and residents who feel that they've been either personally attacked and or stated that they feel intimidated. Are there guidelines that apply or should apply to council member behavior regarding topic, tone, and content of speeches? If there are, do you favor consistent application of those guidelines? And what other actions are you willing to take to address this particular issue? And I believe, Jennifer, to start with you.
I think it's me. You know, I think unfortunately there's been a breakdown in civility by everyone. Council members should probably be held to a higher standard, and so I do think that perhaps we need to think a little bit more before we speak to our residents about things. But generally, I do think it's just sort of endemic in our community and perhaps even the country. So I would like to see us increase our civility in person, in council meetings, and online.
Thank you. Michael?
I'll agree with many of the words that you just said, Jennifer, but let me also add that I think that some of what's gone on pre and post Measure-E and recently, and the continual throwing under the bus publicly of either council members or our treasurer, is absolutely unacceptable. I think we need to enforce and have in place Robert's Rules of Order. I think we need to actually treat this like the public forum that it is and act like grown adults. So I would enforce and support and encourage our current and our pending mayor to do that, and would beg for progress in the city and the return to civility.
Thank you. Betty Lynn?
No, we preach civility and kindness and acceptance, but I know a lot of us don't really follow it. And national level, you know, local level, that's really how people are starting to treat each other. Because in distrust, in discourse, some people thrive very well. At the council, when people are speaking, you know, there's actually no rules of how long council members get to speak. People coming in front of the podium, they have 3 minutes. And no matter what they say, we sit there and we listen, because this is the courtesy that we give them. So as the mayor, I try to run my meetings and bring it back to let's do our business instead of attacking each other, because that's not how I want my meetings to run. We have business to get to, and we can always do it in a respectful manner. And for me, that has to be shown by leadership. I will treat you with respect, but then in turn, I would like that from whoever's speaking at the podium as well.
Well, I would agree with most of the comments, or if not all the comments that have been made about respect and decorum that needs to be improved. I think we should put ourselves above the level of having banners back and forth. They can do those on private. I don't believe it's a public forum that should take place. I also think that the council could probably benefit by following more rules, Robert's Rules of Order, which I don't think they follow as closely as I might desire. And I think that might help bring a little bit more structure and decorum to those meetings.
Thank you. Kevin?
You know, I come from the city of Los Angeles, and I don't know if you've ever been to a city council meeting.
With your brass knuckles.
This is like a tea party. But agreeing with all my colleagues, the bottom line is, we need to be civil. This is not personable. This is, you know, we're all friends. We're all neighbors. We're all here to do the right thing. And we're not going to agree all the time, but the bottom line is you can't take it personal. Everybody up here has a different idea of how to do something, but everybody wants to do the right thing. So that's all. Be respectful.
Victoria?
So, you know, as I like to say, it's important that we disagree without being disagreeable. It's important to critique ideas and concepts and not criticize people or attack people personally. I did actually recently have occasion to look up the rules of order for our city council meetings. It's actually not Roberts, it's actually Rosenberg, I learned, which is a more updated version of Roberts, but same general concept. And I'll just, you know, maybe respectfully point out that it is the mayor's job to bring up a point of order and enforce a point of order when we've moved from critiquing ideas to criticizing and attacking people. So I would just say that you know, again, strong leadership, it's not fun to have to stand up and interject or interrupt someone or you know, stop a train of thought if it's going down a wrong tangent. But that's part of leadership, and you have to do it.
Thank you all very much. We're going to take a 2 or 3 minute break here while we kind of collect the questions. The clock on the wall right now says 8:28. So if you leave your seats, please be back here by 8:31 because that's when we're starting.
I wasn't going to go there. Yeah.